I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is author Don West and actress Margaret O'Brien. Author Don West was born in Kentucky but grew up in Detroit. He graduated from Michigan State University and earned a Master of Fine Arts from Ohio University. Don has garnered awards for his two previous books, Tall and Coping, and he's here to tell us about Dream of the Great Blue. What does the title mean?
Well, Dream of the Great Blue is actually the title of the painting on the cover of the book.
Oh, it's a great, great painting. I'm going to
thank
hold
you.
it. Who did the painting?
I did the painting.
You do? You're
yes,
a painter
I'm
too?
a painter, yes. And the characters in the book are painters. And so I had the experience of being a painter and to write the book.
So tell us what the subject of Tall was. Let's talk about those other two books, and then we'll talk about Dream of the Great Blue.
Actually, Tall and Coping are short stories that I've written, and they'll be coming out in a book called Perfect Relationships.
Oh, because you do a lot of short stories, don't you?
Yes, I've done 14 short stories, and they'll be put together in this book.
Is that how you started writing? Was that the genre you wanted to go into?
No, actually, I started backwards. I started right at the top with a novel, and realized that I needed to learn to write, and so I wrote the short stories in the process of reworking my novel over the past 7 years.
Oh, so it's been a long process.
A long process.
One of the things you say is it takes more than an author to write a book. What does that mean?
Well, it takes lots of people. For instance, to produce the book, you have an editor. You need an editor who will keep you in line.
Do you have a good relationship with an editor?
Yes, I have an editor named C.E. Agajanian out of Canada, a young man who is garnering awards with his playwriting.
Oh, he's a playwright himself.
He's a playwright himself, yes, and he's shortlisted for some prominent awards out of Canada, yeah. But there are also all the readers who are reading the book. My wife read this book probably more times than was humanly possible for anyone to read a book.
Does she tell you about the flow and about the content?
Oh yes, she tells me about all the things that are wrong with it.
Does she?
Yes. And she also tells me about the things that are good with it.
But is she a professional?
Not a professional editor, but she does photography.
So she also took the pictures that are inside.
Right,
Yes,
right,
I saw that.
Yes. Yes, we've worked together on this book. In fact, we started out writing it together, but we ended up writing, I doing the writing and she doing the critiquing.
I see.
We worked together on it that way.
Your character is an artist. You just said you were an artist. Is that why you wrote the book? You write it about yourself?
No, actually it's not about me. In fact, I find that my life isn't all that interesting. I started out writing it about me, but it turns out that the characters are much more interesting than I am. And I had a great time learning about the characters and their story.
Do you actually paint were you painting for exhibitions?
Oh yes, I show with the Liz Hernandez Gallery in Tucson and with Bentley Projects in Phoenix.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
So you are...
I've been painting 35 years. I paint for a living.
Is the painting on the cover diptych? Or is it just
yes,
one?
it's a diptych. There's two panels, and it's a pretty large piece. I think it's 53 inches by... it's 6 feet long. Pretty sure it's 6 feet.
One of the things in the book is the artist, who's the main character, paints a large mural.
Right.
As big as this?
Well, the murals in the book are paintings in a B&B, and he's painted several bedrooms.
Oh,
and
in that
she goes
respect,
to stay in this B&B and sees these murals. And I actually painted murals in a B&B in Tucson, and I set the book there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
What about that's the whole inspiration then?
No, the inspiration actually is about the themes of the book: love, growing older, how we face life as we get older, and making choices and dreams that we are trying to fulfill.
Yeah, you talk about age and how to maintain an active life, but you're really not old.
Well, I'm older than maybe you might think.
I mean, you're really not old, and yet I think you're facing all these, as the baby boomers grow up, is that the idea?
Well, I don't think any of us are old. I mean, I think we get older, but I don't think we ever get old. I mean, sequoia tree gets to be 2,000 years old, and I think that's old, and I don't think I'll make 2,000 years, but...
But you give some ideas about how to maintain an active life.
Yes, and I wanted to share those things with the readers, and that was really the inspiration behind the book, was to sort of reveal some of the things of my experiences in life and to share those with readers of my age. Coming of age tales generally come about at an earlier age, and since this was my first novel, I passed the early coming of age tale, so I'm thinking this is my coming of age tale. Coming of middle age.
Coming of middle age.
Right.
Do you actually tell the reader what to do?
Oh, no.
Or it's what your characters are doing?
My characters tell me their story, and I write it down. And in that process, I'm able to reveal things about what we all share as we get older.
Like?
Well, like, you know, it's a little harder to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, this is a simple fact, you know.
Yeah.
A simple fact, as you get older, it's a little harder to move around. And there are, you know, when you have children, there are things you have to accept about their growing up and leaving the nest and that kind of thing. And these are all experiences that we all have, and that way I could write the book about those experiences without writing about my own life.
I see. But are you experiencing those things?
Oh, of course. I've experienced some of those things. Yes, I do, as
So
I get older.
can. I think I really love one of the quotes that you took from the Beatles, all you really need is love. And I think you kind of follow that. Is that true in your book?
Well, they're in the process of looking to understand what their love relationships are. And as a member of the baby boomer generation, you know, I grew up with the Beatles there. And of course, All You Need Is Love, that was almost the anthem of the time. And by living in that period, being from that period, I see that as something I almost have to believe.
But what you're saying, as a baby boomer, you guys, baby boomers glorified youth. Right. And now at midlife, how are they facing this young, everything's young, intimidatingly so, to be young?
Yes, that's problematic, and I think we're trying to face it by continuing to grow ourselves, to learn about the fact that, well, we don't stop growing just because we get older. We meet these situations in our lives where we have to continue to grow or we fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and then how do we find our comfort zones?
Well, it's those routines that are comfort zones to begin with, but they become traps later. You end up trapped in these routines, and you can't break out. Fear takes over, and you get static.
Well, how do you get out of those, do you think?
Well, you keep doing new things. Try. I mean, like
Writing
me,
a book?
write a book. Try to write a book.
Paint a picture.
Paint a picture, or take a trip. Go someplace you've never been before. Do something that you have always wanted to do. Maybe one of those childhood dreams you can remember that you didn't get around to doing, you can do.
Just a little bit, huh?
Just a little bit.
You know, also, sometimes we say comfort zones aren't good. I mean, you're saying get out of it and get inspired and do something else. But you want to have a comfort zone in marriage, don't you? I mean, you want to stay in that marriage.
Yes, it's one day at a time, and you work out those comfort zones with another person. You're in that situation where you're give and take, and you have to accommodate some other things that you might not want to accommodate. But I think you know what those comfort zones are and how far you can go beyond them without being too uncomfortable.
So if we read Dream of the Great Blue, will we start knowing how to lead our life a little better?
I don't think I tried to tell anybody how to lead their life, but I just wanted to show people that, you know, you don't have to be stuck where you are. You don't have to give up a dream that you might have wanted because you feel like you're a little older, or you're in this situation, you can't quite move out of it. That's just being stuck, and it's not really a necessary thing. I think you want to try something new. go to a different restaurant tonight.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
it's a simple little thing, and it's
buy your groceries from a new market.
Right. It's empowering to do that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to write a book about those kinds of things, and to find those new things that you can. It just makes your life better.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to be with us today.
I've had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And don't go away. We'll be right back with Margaret O'Brien. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. California native Margaret O'Brien was a radio star with more than 400 shows to her credit by the time she was a teenager. Don't forget, during that time, she was also one of the biggest names in the MGM stable. She won an Academy Award for Meet Me in St. Louis in 1944, and she kept her audience in tears as she managed to shed giant tears on the screen. Was it hard to cry on cue?
No. Actually, I was a good crier, but not in real life. I was a very happy child, actually, in real life. I really enjoyed myself, but sometimes it could have, so the story goes of me in St. Louis that Vincent Minnelli told me that my dog was sick. But that's not true. Actually, the way they used to get me to cry is that June Allison and I were in competition on the MGM lot. We were known as the town criers. So if I had a hard time crying, my mother came to me and said, well, June can cry. She doesn't need false tears that the makeup man gives you. She can cry real tears, and that would get me to cry.
Oh, that would make you upset.
Because I couldn't have June ahead of me here in our competition.
Well, you were working with Vincent Minnelli when you won your Oscar, which was a special kind of Oscar for child star.
For a particular role, which was Meet Me in St. Louis,
which everyone loves. I mean, every time we say your name, everyone loves everything. They talk about you from Little Women to Secret Garden to blah, on and on and on. But how were the directors on the set? Were they nice to you
yes, I love the different directors, and I learned really from each one. Mervyn LeRoy, who directed Little Women, he was wonderful to work with. George Cukor, who was one of my favorites, that I did Heller in Pink Tights with Sophia Loren.
And Our Vines.
And then Our Vines of Tender Grapes. It was just, everybody I worked with was wonderful. I mean, I was very lucky. I think that's where you really learn, is through your directors.
That's why I wondered how they treated you, because they were dealing with actresses who were mature actresses, and then they had this cute little girl.
But actually, I was a kind of serious child on the lot. Not in when I got home, but when I had my job to do, I took it very seriously. I wasn't real childlike when I did it. I knew that there was a lot riding on the picture, and so I wanted to do my best, and I was serious. So they talked to me like a serious actress.
Oh,
yes,
they
did. They didn't say, "Oh, you'll get a lollipop if you do the see this." No.
They directed you the way they would direct.
Directed me the way they would direct the grown-up stars.
Well, that's probably why you learned so much from them. Was your last film Little Women?
Oh, no. I did a lot of films after that. Heller in Pink Tights. I did a film with the great silent film star Anita Page called Hollywood Mortuary and so forth. So I've done several films since, and then I did the Natalie Wood for Bogdanovich.
Well, did you retire from the screen in 1951?
No, I never retired.
You never did?
No. I went on and I did more of the big television shows. I did all of the
TV.
shows. I did the Perry Masons. I did Rawhide with Clint Eastwood. I did the Playhouse 90s. I did all of those shows.
Oh, I thought you
still do a lot of television and the movies of the week and so forth.
I thought you were doing a lot of stage and
stage
dinner
also.
Theater.
Yes, stage also, because people don't realize that I actually went on stage from the time I was 10 years old.
Oh, you were on stage as well? Because the radio, what were you doing on radio? How could you do
radio was when I was younger.
Oh, yeah.
That's when I was more like you know, 6, 7, 8. I did all of the Lux Radio theaters.
Were you reading
No, I
scripts?
memorized it all. So that's why it was easy for me to go on to stage and then live television, because I had that training of, because I was just learning to read, and holding the script sort of got me nervous. So I just learned all my radio shows.
Oh, so
and I did all of them. I did the Duffy's Tavern, I did the Suspense Theater on television, I mean on radio, all the, as I say, the Lux Radio theaters, Tallulah Bankhead show, the Charlie McCarthy show. I did as much radio as I did movies.
But some of the ones, some of those shows you were playing hostess.
Some was host or hostess, and then some were the dramatic shows.
So you played
so
everything.
It was a variety that I kind of played a little bit of everything, yes.
Right. I think one of the really sad stories, but has a happy ending, was that your Academy Award, your Oscar was stolen.
Yes, well, we had a maid that was polishing the furnishings and the Oscar and the awards, and then she said, well, I'll take it home and I'll finish polishing, and somehow she never came back. I don't think she actually stole it, because she never sold it, and it was in her attic.
Oh, wait, you
all
found
these
it?
years.
Oh.
Well, I never thought I'd find it. The Academy gave me a duplicate.
Oh, so but
never thinking that it would be found. But some auctioneers went to the Rose Bowl swap meet, and they kept going to the Rose Bowl swap meet for several years, and there was a vendor there that had this Oscar, and everybody thought it was a fake, so they didn't buy it. Then they started looking at it more closely and realized it was the real one. And but the Academy is always looking for stolen Oscars, Oscars that are missing. And they had put out a brochure where they were selling it for a lot of money. And they were having a big auction, and they saw the book and got all their lawyers onto it and said, no, 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 you can't sell this Oscar. This belongs to Miss O'Brien or the Academy.
So did you get two?
So, no, I had to give the replacement back.
So you did.
But I got a whole new ceremony.
But that was great.
That was fun.
The great thing is that you never had to go without your Oscar. You always had it at home.
Well, no, there were many years I didn't have it.
Oh,
and
there
then
were?
they got me a replacement. And then I got the original back. But the replacement really wasn't the same thing.
It didn't feel fun.
No.
Well, you know, you did so many things, and you were just filled with energy, say the 40s and the 50s.
Right.
Do you think you could go back and do that kind of thing again?
Oh,
what
I don't
kept
think
you going?
Oh, I can still, work all the time, but I don't want to work every moment of the day anymore.
But
I
you
like
were,
doing
weren't
something
you?
twice a year, or I still do a lot of radio and television, but I don't want to have to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day.
But there was so much energy put into it, and you were doing so much.
Yes, well, when you were under contract, not even when you weren't working, you had to be at the studio. I had to go to school, or I had to be there for publicity. So you always were still at the studio, even when you weren't, making a movie.
That's what I was going to ask you. You went to school on the set.
Right. Well, I actually had a tutor because I was working a lot. But I'd go into the little schoolhouse, at recess and see everybody.
And you
all
raised
the other kids that were under contract,
You raised a daughter.
Yes,
but you
I had a
raised her
daughter.
probably totally differently from the way you
Well,
were
no,
raised.
she could have done. She wanted to have done movies, and she's still young. She's in her early 20s.
But she wasn't a child star like her mother.
No, she always from childhood wanted to be a psychologist.
Oh, so she had.
So I letting her follow her destiny. And then as a child, I wanted to be an actress. So I think, so it's funny, you sometimes know what you want to be very young.
But so even though she did have a totally different kind of life from you, really lifestyle, she got to do what she wanted to do.
She got to do what she wanted to do, and I think you have to follow what your daughter or your son, if you have a son, wants to do.
One of the great things, I think, is this Afton Fraser's book.
Yes, Afton Fraser's book is so wonderful, and it's from the perspective of a young couple, mainly Mr. Fraser's wife,
Brendan Fraser.
Yes, Brendan Fraser, who was the star of The Mummy and Gods and Monsters and all these wonderful movies, from a young wife's feel of Hollywood. And I think that's what's so nice, and their enjoyment of the classics and the MGM movies and so forth. And so she wrote this book on
and there you are.
Those movies so that young people today can get a feel of those movies and the history of Hollywood. And I think that is that's just wonderful. And I wrote the foreword on the book, and I'm going to be doing some television with her and one of her book signings, and we already did a book signing down at the Grove.
It's called Hollywood Picks
Borders.
the Classics.
Yes,
and
she wrote a wonderful book, and she's a lovely person, and I'm very fond of them as a couple.
Here you are.
Yes, there I am.
There you are,
yes,
and
with
she
Judy.
picked you with Judy, and you had some stories about
yes, I'm
your
very
Judy
flattered
Garland.
to have been picked, you know, by Mrs. Fraser, and of course, Mimi in St. Louis was one of my favorite pictures. And every year I do the Judy Garland Film Festival.
Oh, tell us about that.
Well, this is in Minnesota, and it's Grand Rapids, and I do it once a year with Joey Luft, who's a lovely person, who's Judy Garland's son. And we have a great time up there. June Allison was up there one year, and of course you have all the munchkins. As I said, where do you stay in your hotel room and open the door, and there's all the munchkins marching to the hotel lobby. So it's a lot of fun.
Do you sing?
I don't sing, no.
You don't sing,
but we sign autographs, and I host.
Oh, I
and I
see.
do a talk on
you
Meet
do.
Me in St. Louis, and Joey does a talk
About
and
his
it's
mother?
About his mother, does a lovely talk, and how much fun she was,
Oh,
which a
that's
lot
nice.
of people don't know. The fun that she enjoyed taking them to Disneyland, and what a wonderful childhood and what a wonderful mother she was. And Judy loved children, and I know where it pertained to me. She was a lot of fun on the set.
Oh, how was she? Did she have any children at that time?
No, she didn't.
She
She
didn't,
was
so-
just engaged to Vincent Minnelli
Oh, that's
on
right.
Meet Me in St. Louis, which was a very happy time for Judy.
So she was very young and vibrant, and she
was just like an older sister. She'd go and she'd jump rope with you and play games. And
she was a youngster,
yes, she was
wasn't
wonderful. And I just want to get in that the Judy Garland Festival is June 23rd through the 25th.
And
people
it's in
come
Minnesota.
In Minnesota, because that's where she grew up from childhood.
Well, I don't think
And-
many people
no,
know that.
And they have her house.
Oh, they do.
You can go through her house with the original furnishings that she lived with her sisters and her mother and her father. And he owned a theater there, a movie
Her
theater
father.
in Grand Rapids. So people come from all over the country, and also the gentleman who owns the Ruby Slippers.
Oh.
He's going to be there.
So do you get to kind of look around for people that are like 6 degrees from Judy and suggest people?
Yes, and it's amazing. All ages go
that's-
up there.
Because
And
they could see all these shows on
They can see
television,
all the shows,
and they read like
right.
Afton Fraser's book, when Hollywood
Yes.
picks all these
And
super
June
things.
Lockhart's going to be there this year, who was in Meet Me in St. Louis. So she's going to
Have
be...
you stayed friends from the time you were at the studios together?
Well, we see each other at a lot of different dues and television shows that we appear on and so forth. So that will be a lot of fun. As I say, there was June Allison, and then year before last was Donald O'Connor. It was
Oh,
his
he's
last year
wonderful.
out. So I really cherish those moments I had with him and his wife in Grand Rapids.
What about all the films that you've done? What was your favorite part? People have
Well-
told me they love Little Women. Every
Well, I
time
love
mention
Little
it.
Women because I would read it as a child, and so I was so lucky to have done so many classics, which was Secret Garden.
Well,
That were
was-
books that I had read.
Oh, that's it.
So, and Jane Eyre, which I had read, and Little Women, which I had read. So it was a wonderful childhood, because how many children get to do their favorite books and become that character?
No, and then when you get to be the character, you already
Yes.
know what you've read.
Exactly.
And you had a feeling of how to play her.
And I
guess.
could become that very character
So-
of one of my favorite characters. So that was a wonderful childhood.
So those classics were the ones that you enjoyed the
Yes,
most.
and of course I love Meet Me in St. Louis too. That was a really fun picture to be on, because everybody really got along on that movie on the set.
And you had
everything.
changed your name just before that, right?
That was when I did Journey for Margaret.
And Margaret
And
was
I played
Margaret.
the part of Margaret, and I got so engrossed in that part that I wanted to be Margaret. So I did have it legally changed, yes.
And were you happy you did that?
Yes. yes.
You were.
Well, I mean, I'm Margaret,
I'm
you know.
Margaret, yeah.
So,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we just think that you've done such great
Well,
things for Hollywood. I
thank
mean,
you so
to have
much.
people like you who are continuing to talk about the good things that went on in Hollywood.
well, it's a wonderful place to have grown up, and I still had a wonderful childhood. I had the little girl who lived next door. I was a friend of mine that lived next door to us, and I always had a stand-in on the set when
Were
I
you
worked
friends
on
with
the
her?
set, and I was friends with her. So I certainly wasn't without children to play with.
No, I think maybe that's a misconception
It
people
is.
get, and I'm
It
glad
is.
that you've brought that up and made it
Because
clear.
each child has a stand-in is the little girl who stands under the lights so they can do the lighting on the set when they're not doing a scene. So when there was other scenes to be shot, she and I would have our time
Oh, yeah,
on
yeah,
the
yeah.
set to play together, and then we did go to school together on the set. But I did have a private tutor when I wasn't making a movie.
Well, we're glad you came and told us
Well,
about it.
thank you. It's
Thank
great
you.
to see you, and I know we run into each other from time to
Yeah,
time.
we do,
And
and
it's so
it's-
nice to see you
thank
and to
you.
be on your show.
Thank you, Margaret. And thank you for watching. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, Los Angeles 90017. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.
Goodbye.